So here we are together again. So I'm working on this nice little 12 by 12 here, little woodland scene. Now I've been working on the trees here for the last day. I'm now going to start working on the foreground here, and I'm going to show you exactly how I'm going to do it. So this, at the moment, this is at a blocked in stage. It's just had one coat of acrylic. Obviously that's now dry. And I am going to show you how to do the bluebells in this sort of nice wooded area here and an obvious path here. But that has just been blocked in a sort of like a middle tone. But let's get going on that now. I'll show you how I'm going to do it. So first of all, the first thing to do is to add the darker tones. Now there are bluebells all the way across the front here, but as it comes closer, the bluebells become a little bit less dense and you can see a lot more of the grass through. So I'll put those in afterwards. Now I'm going to use some liquid for this, and I'm mixing it with some ivory black, so it's like just a darker glaze. I might also mix in a bit of cobalt blue and a touch of that dioxine purple, only a little bit. Let's see how that looks. It's fine for this bit here, I think, and I'm just going to go roughly just over this sort of distant area. Probably even a bit more blue and dioxine. Yeah, that's a bit better. So the brush I'm using here is a Tree and Texture brush from Rosemary & Co. And this is size 3/8 of an inch. So I'm going over the lighter bits and the darker bits with this, just going over all of it. Just dabbing it on there. This brush gives you quite a nice sort of spotty textured look, which is perfect for these bluebells. Okay, now as we move forward, I'm going to do exactly the same thing here, but I'm going to change the colour and I'm going to go with a green, sap, permanent sap green. So I've changed the brush just to do this bit of the foreground here. This is a Coma brush I'm using. Now for those of you that are interested in using the same brushes that I use, if you now go to Rosemary & Co.'s website, which I'll leave a link in the description, you'll be able to buy a set of my brushes, and they are the exact same brushes that I'm using here. So now before I start working on the highlights, what I'm going to do, while I've got this brush out, I'm just going to do more of a sideways motion here on the path. What you seem to have in there is sort of lots of little dead leaves and sticks and things that are laying on the floor. So let's get going on some of the greenery in here. So what colours are we going to use? We're going to use Windsor Lemon. It's quite light, the greenery in there, until you come right down to the foreground where it becomes a bit richer. So we're going to use that. We're going to use Phthalo yellow shade. Let's see if we can just mix that over here. And I'm using this fan brush here, which is a Series 27 and it's size medium. Also from Rosemary & Co. and also in the set. So just in the lighter areas, just going to dab it on, not using any liquid, and I haven't thinned it down with white spirit or mineral spirit, or whatever you want to call it. In fact, I need a little bit more paint mix there. And what I'm doing is I'm putting on there, doing just a slight downward motion. And it's just sort of giving you a bit of a hint of a, grass texture. Wouldn't use this when I come right down to the foreground because it just won't look quite right. But also putting some of it into that blue there, just sort of here and there. Sometimes when doing this, the best brush to use is the oldest. So the brush I'm using here is just a fan. In fact, it would have looked something like that at one time, but it's just old and hasn't been cleaned very well, so it's sort of aged a little bit more, but sometimes that works better. So it's a good idea to experiment with the brushes you're using, try and get the right effect. So what I'm going to do now is a little bit more detail just in the greenery in the foreground. Just put in more of an obvious sign of the foliage that you get with bluebells. doing these bluebells in the highlight or sunny areas here, where you've got the sun shining on the top of those bluebells. Colour changes from a sort of a purpley blue to almost like a pink, and that colour is really difficult to get. So I'm using titanium white, and I'm just mixing in with it a little bit of magenta, just a tiny bit, just to give it that little bit of colour. But it's a very difficult colour to get, and even this isn't quite right. But it's one of those few colours that is just very difficult to get right. So I've messed around with a couple of different techniques to try and get it right, and I've settled on using the fan brush here, series 2055, and it's allowed me to get some really tight little blobs of colour. Just using the very corner. Okay, so now I'm going to get started on this path here. It doesn't require a great deal of work, really. It's kind of just suggesting the detail that's there. There's not a lot on it. I think you've got quite a few dead leaves and things there, but it's just got this sort of stippled look. So I'm going to do the shaded areas with this sort of mauvey browny colour here, which I've mixed with a bit of the magenta, a bit of yellow ochre in there. Probably even go in with a bit of that burnt sienna. The tricky bit is going to be getting these highlights right. And they're really quite light. Right, so coming to the end now, I'm just going to add a few darker bits to the path, and then we are pretty much there. So just using burnt umber, I'm just going to sort of stipple it on. In particular, around the edge of the path here, where you've got, you know, leaves, dead leaves. Leaves are more likely to gather. And it just makes the edge of that sort of pathway look a little bit less regular as well.